So the way that Blades is setting this up is he's setting up a very clear lineage between the originally written song back in the early days of jazz, the heart of jazz in the 50s, the heart of its height, when Louis Armstrong would have been an immense cultural figure, and this would have been a song he performed, onto the 70s, when you have the collision of that jazz tradition with salsa music and style and Puerto Rican, or in Blades' example, he's Panamanian. So broader Central American, North American culture and music combining. And now in the present day, when as a more established artist, as a more established art form, we can go into a place like the Lincoln Center, again, a very elevated, seen as high-class place to perform music, and we can perform this song. What up, everybody? My name is Fred. I'm a singer-songwriter based out of New York City, and I play music to people on the street that I've never met before. So I love learning about live performance, I love watching live performance, and today we're going to dive into something that I think is pretty special, and we're going to see if there's anything that we can take away for our own creative practice. So, today we are watching a video of Ruben Blades, or Ruben Blades, depending, at the Lincoln Center. Jazz at the Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis, a jazz trumpeter we'll talk about in a second, and they're performing the famous song PEDRO NAVAJA off of the 1978 album that Blades did with Willie Colon, titled Siembra. So that's a lot I threw at you, but we'll dive into some of those themes, some of the reasons that I brought up that history as we get into the video. For now, let's kick it off. Oh, police! Okay, sorry to stop the video there, but I want to talk to something very specific and stylistically important. So when we talk about salsa music, which this is, PEDRO NAVAJA is salsa music, it's a very exemplary of the genre. The basis, the spiritual basis and rhythmic basis of salsa music is the clave, which our friend here on the timbales is playing very clearly. So what he's doing, especially in an environment, jazz at the Lincoln Center, one of the most elevated musical contexts that there are as far as performances like this with the orchestra, he's setting a very clear rhythmic tradition off the bat that Ruben Blades is about to connect to in a really fun way. But he's just setting a very clear flag in the ground saying, this is salsa music, here's the clave, let's get ready because the party's about to begin.
Oh, the shark, babe, has such teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white. Just a jackknife has old Mac Heath, babe, and he keeps it out of sight. You know when that shark bites with them teeth, dear, scarlet billows start to spread. Fancy gloves, though, where's old Mac Heath, babe? So there's never, ever a trace of red.
Beautiful. So that song is not PEDRO NAVAJA. That is a song called Mac the Knife, made famous by Louis Armstrong from a 1928 show called The Three Penny Opera. So off the bat, we're looking back at the late 1920s, early 1930s. That is the spiritual grounding for the song, and that's something that Blades has said, is that this song, PEDRO NAVAJA, Navaja means a folding knife in Spanish, and it's based off of this song originally, Mac the Knife, the story of a serial killer who was both immaculately dressed and committed his crimes with a degree of precision that even his lovely white gloves did not touch a shade of red. No blood got on these lovely gloves that he had. He uses it, of course, he's grounding the song that he's about to sing. But it's also framing in the broader United States, broader North American musical context, the type of place that the Three Penny Opera and that Magnum the Knife would have been performed. Would have been, a cabaret style show, something a little bit more grounded in that time period. And then on into the 50s with Louis Armstrong would have been more in a swing and like a Frank Sinatra style, more open big band party situation. So that then jumps to the 70s when that song was originally written, Pedro Navaja, on this album. And then on to the present day, or I think this was 2014 that they did this, that now this is a reflection on that evolution of music. So really the most important thing is that the way that Blades is setting this up is he's setting up a very clear lineage between the originally written song back in the early days of jazz, the heart of jazz in the 50s, the heart of its height, when Louis Armstrong would have been an immense cultural figure, and this would have been a song he performed, onto the 70s when you have the collision of that jazz tradition with salsa music and style and Puerto Rican, or in Blades' example, he's Panamanian. So broader Central American, North American culture and music combining. And now in the present day, when as a more established artist, as a more established art form, we can go into a place like the Lincoln Center, again, a very elevated, seen as high-class place to perform music, and we can perform this song. So I'm going to start to let the song play out a little bit more, but I wanted to give you that grounding as we get into some of the themes that he's talking about. Why it's so interesting that the message of this song is contrasted in a location like the Lincoln Center. So let's go.
Por la esquina del viejo barrio lo vi pasar. Cántala conmigo.
Sí, sing it with me.
Con el tumbao que tienen los guapos al caminar. Las manos siempre en los bolsillos de su gabán. Pa' que no sepan en cuál de ellas lleva el puñal.
The puñal, the knife.
Usa un sombrero de ala ancha de medio lado y zapatillas por si hay problemas salir volado. Lentes oscuros pa' que no sepan que está mirando y un diente de oro que cuando ríen se ve brillando.
Ríe.
Como a 3 cuadras de aquella esquina, una mujer va recorriendo la acera entera por 5ª vez. Y en un zaguán entra y se da un trago para olvidar que el día está flojo y no hay clientes para trabajar. Un carro pasa muy despacito por la avenida. No tiene marcas, pero sabemos que es policía. Pedro Navaja, las manos siempre dentro del gabán. Mira y sonríe y el diente de oro vuelve a brillar.
Okay, quick set in the stage. We've got Pedro Navaja, dressed very well, with the little gold teeth that when he smiles, it lights up the whole street. You've got a woman who's walking the streets looking for work, goes into a corner store to get a drink to forget about the fact that she has no clients, and a police car that, no markings, but everybody knows it's a police car. That's what we're working with, 1970s New York City.
Mientras camina pasa la vista de esquina a esquina. No se ve un alma, está desierta toda la avenida. Cuando de pronto esa mujer sale del zaguán y Pedro Navaja aprieta un puño dentro del gabán. Mira pa' un lado, mira pa' el otro y no ve a nadie. Sin ruido cruza la calle y mientras tanto en la otra acera refunfuñando, pues no hizo pesos con qué comer. Mientras camina del viejo abrigo, saca un revólver. Esa mujer iba a guardarlo en su cartera pa' que no estorbe. Un 38 Smith & Wesson del especial, que carga encima pa' que la libre de todo mal. Y Pedro Navaja, puñale y mano, le fue pa' encima. El diente de oro iba alumbrando toda la avenida.
Hizo fácil.
Mientras reía el puñal un día sin compasión, cuando de pronto sonó un disparo como un cañón. Y Pedro Navaja cayó en la acera mientras veía a la mujer que revólver en mano y de muerte herida, ay, le decía: yo que pensaba, hoy no es mi día, estoy salado. Pero Pedro Navaja, tú estás peor, no estás en nada.
Okay, what just went down? Back on the streets of New York City, we have a woman. She steps out of the corner store without knowing. Un Smith & Wesson 38 El Especial she has in her wallet, just in case anything should happen to go down. Our protagonista, Pedro Navaja, comes with his knife, stabs her in the back. Oh, all of a sudden, bang! A shot like a cannon. What happened? Nobody asked any questions.
Solo un borracho con los dos cuerpos se tropezó. Cogió el revólver, el puñal, los pesos y se marchó. Y tropezando se fue cantando desafinado el coro que aquí les traje y da el mensaje de mi canción que dijo Dios:
La vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay, Dios. La vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay,
Pedro Navaja, matón de esquina, quien a hierro mata, a hierro termina.
la vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida.
Valiente pescador, balanzuelo que tiraste, en vez de una sardina, a un tiburón enganchaste.
La vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay,
¿Qué te da y qué te da en la acera? ¿Qué te da y qué te da si la vida es severa?
la vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay,
Y todo lo que sube y baja, pregúntale a Pedro Navaja. Oh, oh.
Awesome. So, basically, the story ends as the woman got stabbed in the back by Pedro Navaja. She turned around with the pistol, sends him to the ground, and nobody asked any questions. Nobody was curious. The only person who managed to, make use of the situation was a drunk man who came, took the knife, the revolver, the couple of dollars that was on the bodies, and walked off. He walks off singing, La vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida, ay Dios. For him, life gives you surprises. My goodness, does life give you surprises. For Pedro Navaja and to this woman, life also gives you surprises, a different kind of surprises. So, first off, an incredible story told in an incredible artistic manner, in the style of salsa. I mean, the package there is really a lot of fun. But I also want to point out to the fact that the point where they start singing La vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida also represents a pivot stylistically. Prior to that point, he'd been telling this story, builds, and then lands on the little pivot about the drunk man who grabs the items from the bodies, and then spins into a message about life that is basically a long dance session for salsa dancers, which was fundamentally a social dance music, and that's one of the reasons that it saw such a rise and proliferation in New York City in the 50s through 70s and beyond, was because it served as a social dance. What salsa music was essentially an Americanized name for a wide array of dances from the Caribbean and Central America and even South America beyond as well. And it gave an opportunity to basically package these as a crossover style of music that could then be marketed more to, whiter audiences and more commercial audiences as well. So when this song is coming out, it's a message about what it's like, the experience for, Latin American people in the streets of New York City and elsewhere, something that a lot of people could connect with in that regard. Also, it's a way to liberate people of that emotion and that feeling, for them to go into the dance hall, let themselves be free to the music, singing along to choruses such as, "Life gives you surprises, my goodness, does life give you surprises?" So I want to back up a little bit and get to that pivot where, after the shot sounds out like a cannon, he starts to spin it into the overall theme of the music.
Borracho con los dos cuerpos se tropezó.
Still singing the story.
Cogió el revólver, el puñal, los pesos y se marchó. Y tropezando se fue cantando desafinado. El coro que aquí les traje y da el mensaje de mi canción.
Now listen to how the feel.
Pedro Navaja, matón de esquina, quien a hierro mata, a hierro termina.
La vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida.
Valiente pescador,
Ay,
para el anzuelo que tiraste, y en vez de una sardina, a un tiburón enganchaste.
la vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay,
¿Qué te da y qué te da en la acera? ¿Qué te da y qué te da si la vida es severa?
la vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay,
Y todo lo que sube y baja, pregúntale a Pedro Navaja. Oh, oh.
Again, all the different rhythms.
Luis Perico Ortiz. La tierra de Emeterio Betances.
la vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay,
8 millones de historias tiene la ciudad de Nueva York.
la vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida. Ay,
Como me decía mi abuelita, que el que de último ríe se ríe mejor.
la vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida.
Cuando la manda el destino, dicen que no lo cambia ni el más bravo. Si naciste pa' martillo del cielo,
Them
te
dancing in the back.
La vida te da sorpresas, sorpresas te da la vida.
Che, barrio de guapo, cuidado en la sagra. Cuidado, camarada, que el que no corre vuela. En la ciudad de Nueva York, 2 personas fueron encontradas esta madrugada, los cuerpos sin vida.
Amazing. 8 millones historias tiene la ciudad de Nueva York. 8 million stories has the city of New York. First off, thoughts thinking about the entire presentation. Well, Ruben dressed immaculately. Of course, they're in, jazz at the Lincoln Center. That's going to be in a situation where everybody's going to be dressed to the nines. And that is an interesting contrast to place against a salsa music that is singing about challenges of the street life, of city life. And it's amazing in some regards, but also challenging in others to think of something that continues to be thought of as street music and is played in the streets of New York. On street corners, you will hear Pedro Navaja on a regular basis for sure. Also, has enough depth to it and complexity that it can be played in a place such as the Lincoln Center. Now, of course, the definitions of what would be allowed as high-class culture have evolved over the years. That's something that definitely would have been there would have been a tighter grasp on in the past that with a positive change is now much more open. But Ruben Blades is somebody who he's Panamanian. Again, brief history on Panama. Briefest is basically Panama gained its independence from Colombia in the early 1900s, so that the U.S. could functionally build the Panama Canal, which was a major barrier to trade. Was the fact that they couldn't get through the small strip of land that connects North America to South America as a part of Central America. And so there's a problematic history to Panama in this sense, in the way that there's a problematic history to much of North and South America. Much of the Americas is in relation to their colonial histories. But it's a marvelous, marvelous turn of history that from that point in time of being essentially used as a commercial tool for the United States in the early 1900s, that fostered a collision of culture between Latin America and New York, a commercial hub for the United States, that then developed into musical styles such as salsa, rumba, mambo, etc., that have now reached that status of being elevated to the highest cultural level that can be considered in the United States, performing with an orchestra at a venue such as the Lincoln Center. And you still see that stylistic integrity. Again, why did they signal with the clave at the very start? Is to say, just so you all know, no matter what's about to happen, this is the tradition that we're drawing off of. This is where it comes from. And we're proud of that, and we're not afraid of that. And it leads to a performance even at this highest level of class and of sophistication that is able to draw all of those different influences together and tell a very integrated, holistic story that leaves the listener both with the impact of the life gives you surprises, the key message of the song, which is clear, but also the lightness and the fun of the dance and the outlet for some of that more difficult aspects of life. They were able to turn that into something better and rewarding, and that furthered the tradition of broader Latin America, Spanish-speaking cultures. Amazing. We're going to cut it there. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for coming along. If you enjoyed this analysis, please subscribe, leave a comment. We're going to come back to you with something new in the future. Peace.